going to do is we're going to import some stuff. So we're going to import use ethers from at usedep/core. And again, if we look at the documentation real quick, this use ethers thing has got some cool stuff. It's got this activate browser wallet thing, got this account thing. It's got some cool stuff. So what do those actually do? We're going to start by exporting a constant variable called header. This is going to be a function, and this is some really fancy TypeScript syntax. What this is meaning is that we're saying header is a function, and here's what the function is going to do. We're going to use this use ethers thing to get a couple variables. So we're going to say constant variable account activate browser wallet deactivate equals use ethers. In order for us to actually use these, though, we need to figure out first if the user is connected. So we're going to create another constant variable. We'll call it is connected, and this is going to equal an account. It's going to equal an account. It's going to equal account does not equal undefined. So we're saying if the account is undefined, we're not connected. If it's not undefined, then great, we're connected. So we're literally just looking to see if there's an account here. And whether or not we're connected will decide if we show a connect button or not. So to do that, we're going to return a div. This is where we're going to return some HTML stuff. And we got to check to see if we're connected. So we'll do is connected. And we're going to use this question mark, which is known as a tertiary operator, which means if this is true, we're going to do something. And if it's false, we're going to do something else. So we're saying, okay, if we are connected, right, what do we do if we're connected here? Well, we're going to create a button. We'll have the color equal primary. Create this button here. And then my VS Code auto makes these closing tags. We could even leave this button blank if we want, or we're actually going to put some fancy stuff in here. And then we'll put a little function in it. We'll say onClick equals deactivate. This is this deactivate function pulled in from our use ethers thing. I should spell it right though. And we're going to call this button disconnect. Oops, there's a little parenthesis next to this. So this is what this is connect thing does. So we're saying if we are connected, great, do this. Now we're going to do a little colon here. And this is going to represent what we're going to do if we're not connected. Okay, if we're not connected, what we're going to show is a different button. Color can still be primary. And we're going to do onClick. We're going to do a function of activate browser wallet. And then we close up the button tag with another \button. And we'll call this one though. So if we are connected, we're going to show a disconnect button. And then if we're not connected, we're going to show a connect button. And that's it, right? Just make sure all of your divs, all your tags are matched up. And we can go ahead and save this. And if we look at our UI, you'll see nothing's changed, right? Okay, well, why hasn't anything changed? Well, this component that we just made, it's living inside of this components folder. And we've exported this header variable, this header function, right? However, it's actually not in our app here, right? So if we look at our index.tsx, this is what's actually getting rendered. So we're just rendering this app variable, which is pulled in from ./app, right? This app.tsx. So index.tsx is really our true ground zero. This is where everything really comes from. This is kind of our entry point, right? This is our main function. You kind of think of it that way. That pulls from this app file that we have here. You can see in here, we don't have any reference to this header, right? We have our dap provider, we have our div tag saying hi, but we don't have the header in here. So what we need to do is we need to import this component we just made into our app.tsx. So what we're going to do is we're going to do import header from ./components/header. And now we can take this header bit, we can place it inside our header tags here. We can just do header, and we'll close the tag by adding it right here. We'll save, and we'll head back. And now we can see a little connect button here, which is great. Obviously, it doesn't look great, but we have the functionality here, which is what we want. And if we hit the connect button, our MetaMask will actually pop up and say, hey, would you like to connect? Which account would you like to connect? I'm going to go ahead, select my first one. Next, connect. It's connecting. And now I'm actually going to be connected. Let's go to one of the supported networks like Coven. And now we can see here, we have this on click equals disconnect. If I click this now, oops, I need to put this inside the tag here. So we just moved on click to being inside of this little button here. Now we can see it actually says disconnect. And if I click it, I get disconnected. And if I hit connect, I get automatically connected, right? So if we look at our MetaMask, we can see we're connected right here, right? That little green thing. We can also manually disconnect by going right into our MetaMasks, click this connected thing here, click the account and hit disconnect the account, and you'll see our front end does indeed update. Awesome. This is how we can take our MetaMasks and actually inject it into our front ends so we can actually use the front ends. Great job. This is absolutely massive where we are so far. Now, you might be saying to yourself, hey, Patrick, this is cool, but it doesn't look very good. That's kind of a gross button in the top right corner. Can we style this up? Can we make this look a lot nicer? And the answer is absolutely yes. So there's a lot of different styling packages out there. You can 100% write your own custom ones. We're going to be using one called Material UI. It's a popular React framework for creating components and doing a lot of styling and doing a lot of really nice work here. So we're going to be adding this to our project as well. So to add it, we're just going to use this line. And I'm just going to go ahead and do it myself. I'm going to come in here. We're going to cancel this with Control C. We're going to do yarn add at material -UI/core. And this will give us access to some really nice libraries for styling all these buttons and styling a lot of the things that we're going to be working with. Back in our header, we can add this styling here. So we're going to do import button make styles from at material-UI/core. And we're going to use their button and their make styles. If we look in the documentation here, you can find their buttons. This is documentation, kind of like what their default buttons look like. And this looks pretty good. Looks a lot better than what we currently have. We're also going to be taking advantage of their make styles bit here. So make styles is a way to actually do styles based off of different themes that you can actually use with Materials UI. We're not going to be working with CSS files because we're going to be working with this make styles instead. If you prefer CSS, you can absolutely easily translate these to CSS files. So we are going to add some use styles first of all using make styles. So in here, we're going to do const use styles equals make styles. And this is where we put a theme in here. We're just going to set it to be a default theme. There's some documentation if you want to go ahead and add your own themes though. So this make styles function is going to have a container. And in this container, we're going to add some padding of theme.spacing. We're going to add display flex. We're going to add justify content, flex end, and then we're going to add gap, theme.spacing 1. So this is really just some typical CSS stuff. Now we're going to take this use styles constant that we just made, and down here we're going to do const classes equals use styles. So now we have this classes object that we can start working with. We're going to take this classes object in our little is connected thing. We're going to do div class name equals a little JavaScript in here, classes.container. And we're going to wrap this whole thing in this div, right? And this is going to style this whole button div here. So now if we go ahead and do yarn start again, because we shut it off, we come back here, we're going to see it's going to look a little bit different. Now it's been moved over here. We have this like fun little disconnect connect button where there's some padding and it looks a little bit nicer. And we're going to change all of our buttons to being kind of this built-in button from the Materials UI. Right, so we're going to swap out all those buttons with our new button here. And if we go back, we can see it looks even nicer now that we've swapped it out with that new type of button, right? It's got a nice little clicky feel to it. And then we can also do another line called variant equals contained for each of our buttons. So right next to the color primary, we'll do variant contained. And then now we go back and we have a really nice button now. So awesome. Now we have like a really nice button. Let's create a component that will contain the meat of our application now though. From Materials UI, we're going to use what's called containers, right? And these are nice little containers that are going to allow us to style and make these different sections. Well, we can import this container bit from this Materials UI by doing import container from at material -UI/core in our app.tsx. And what we'll do to our header, we'll make a little container here. Container, we'll give it a closing tag, container. And then maybe in here, we'll put this little div high, right? So we'll remove that div, we'll paste it in here. And now we can see that it's been formatted a little bit, right? It's been pushed over from the side. It still says high. We're gonna wanna do one more thing. We're gonna give it a max width of being MD. Oops. Max width equals MD. And this max width, now if we look in the docs again on Materials UI, these are the different sizes. We have large, medium, small, extra small, and then false, right? These are the different options we can have for max width. We're just going to do medium. So if we save this now, go to our app, we can see it's been pushed over a little bit more. It's time to add our main pieces, right? We're going to need that top piece for staking and the bottom piece for unstaking. So we're actually going to create a new component called main, and this is going to be our main component. So we're going to create a new file in components called main.tsx. So let's start by just showing some information about our wallet, right? Showing what we have in our wallet associated with what we have in their smart contracts. So we'll say export a constant variable called main, and this will be a function. Here's that syntax for functions in TypeScript and JavaScript. In order for us to show what amounts that we have in our current wallet, we're going to need to know what chain that we're even on, because the network that we're on is going to determine where the addresses are, right? Because it's going to be different if you're on Coven or Mainnet, etc. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because obviously with Brownie, we know where these addresses are, right? And Brownie keeps track of this for us, right? It does it in our builds folder, in our deployments folder. If we look there now, if you actually deployed something to Coven, you'll see this 42. You'll see some stuff in here. You'll see this map.json, which has the most recent deployments of our tokens and our token farm, if you actually deployed it to Coven. If you haven't deployed it to Coven, I highly recommend you doing that now as well. This way, we can test our front ends against a real testnet. So in order to get these addresses, we're going to have to ask Brownie, hey Brownie, what are these addresses? Where are these coming from? So we're going to need to grab some information from this Brownie config. We're basically going to need to get all the information that's in this Brownie config, right? Because it has these addresses already, and this is what we want. However, it's really hard for Node.js to work outside of this source folder. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to send that Brownie config to our front end. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to actually modify by adding a new function called def update front end. Now, the only reason that this works is because we have both our contracts and our front end in the same repository. In the real world, once you deploy your contracts, those addresses are pretty much set, so you can just copy paste them over to your front end repository. But for us, we don't have set contracts yet, so we need a way to update our front end. So what we're going to do is we're going to send that Brownie config over to the front end, right? That way our main can know where those addresses are. We're also going to need to send, the Brownie config to our source folder. We're also going to need to send the build folder. Why? Because this will have access to the dApp token address or any other mock addresses that we're using. We're going to open up our Brownie config, and we're going to paste, and we're going to dump the config into that source folder. Now, TypeScript doesn't work with YAML so well. It works with JSON really well. So we're actually going to convert it from YAML to JSON and dump it into the front end. So we're going to open up our Brownie config. We're going to say with open Brownie config.yaml. We're going to open it in read format. And we're going to say as Brownie config. We're going to say config dictionary equals yaml.load Brownie config loader equals yaml.full loader. So we're going to have to import this YAML from the top. We're going to do import YAML. And what this YAML is going to do is it's going to allow us to load our YAML into a dictionary. That's really it. So you probably don't have it right now. You're going to want to run pip install pyyaml to actually get it. Now we'll be able to have that. Now that we've got this in a dictionary, we're going to want to send this to the front end, right? We're going to want to write this dictionary as a JSON object to our front end. So we're going to say with open, and we're going to open that front end source folder, and that's just where we're going to dump this file. We're going to call it brownie config.json. We're going to open this new file in write mode. We'll say it's as brownie config JSON. What we're going to do is just do what's called a JSON dump. We're just going to take this dictionary and dump it as JSON into this file. So we're going to say json.dump config dic brownie config JSON. Of course, we're going to have to import JSON. And then at the end, we'll even print front end updated. So now that we have this update front end script, what we can do when we run our deploy token and dap token, we can just add this update front end bit. Now we don't want to always update the front end, right? We only want to do it when we're working with the front end. So in our deploy token farm and dap token, we're going to set update front end equals false. So by default, this is false. This way, when we run our tests, the front end won't get updated, right? And down here, we'll just say if update front end, then we'll update the front end. Otherwise, we won't. And in our main function here, we'll just say update front end equals true. Now, if we deploy this to Kovan or Rinkeby, we'll automatically update and send this brownie config. And then let's actually change this to front end update instead of update front end so that we don't have the same method name as our Boolean here. So we'll do front end update instead. So now when we deploy, we'll actually go ahead and update our front end here. But we're not always going to redeploy. So let's also create an update front end.py script. And this will just call that function that we just made. So we'll do def main update front end. And then we'll do from scripts.deploy import update front end, semicolon there. Great. Let's open up a new shell by hitting a little plus button here. Now we have two shells, and we can just do brownie, run scripts, update front end, doesn't matter the network. And what this is just going to do, it's just going to run that copy script, right? It's going to run our update front end script, which we made right here. So if we did this right, we should now have a brownie config.json in our front end /source directory. So if we go in here, we go into our source directory, we can indeed see it's right in here. Do we need anything else? Well, so that's going to give us those addresses, right? It's going to give us some of the addresses, but it's not going to give us everything. What about dap token, right? Dap token isn't going to be something in our brownie config. WAF token and FAU token, sure, they'll be in our config, but dap token is going to be something that only is going to be deployed by us. So we need to send that to the front end too. We need to send basically our whole build folder. So we're going to need to update this update front end script to also send the build folder. I know that we're actually going to be copying a number of different folders. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a new function called copy folders to front end. And in here, so we're going to make this copy folders to front end function here. We're going to do a couple of clever Python things. This is going to take a source and a destination. So we want a source folder and then a destination folder. So we're going to copy this build folder and move it to some folder in the front end. First, we're going to check that that destination exists. And if it exists, we're going to kill it. We're just going to remove it. So we're going to say if os.path.exists destination. We're going to do this shuttle.rmtree dest. And this is going to kill everything. So we need to import both of those. We're going to import os. And we're going to import shuttle or shutil. I actually have no idea how to pronounce that. But we're going to remove that whole bit. And we're just going to copy everything over from our build folder. So we're going to do shuttle.copytree src dest. So we're going to say, hey, if that build folder exists in the front end, just delete it. And we're just going to copy everything over from the build folder. And we're going to do this copy folders to front end a few times. The first thing, of course, like I said, is going to be with this build folder. So we're going to do this copy folders to front end. The source is going to be /build. So we're going to take this whole build thing and we're going to move it to /front end /src. And we're going to create a new folder in here called chain info, right? And this is just going to have all of the build information. And all right, cool. So now we can run that. Brownie run scripts, update front end. We'll go ahead and run that. And great, front end is now updated. So if we look in our front end, we look in source, we now have this chain info folder, which is literally just the build folder, which is awesome. Now we can actually start working with these pieces in our front end. So let's figure out how to get the dApp token address. Well, to get this dApp token address, we're going to need that map that we just got from chain info in our deployments, but we're also going to need to know what chain that we're currently on. Like what we saw before, we have this chain ID from useDApp/core, which will tell us what the chain ID of the current network that we're on. So we can go ahead and import that in here as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to import useethers again from at useDApp/core. And what we're going to do here is useethers allows us to get the chain ID that we're working on. So we can say const chain ID equals useethers. Now that we have the chain ID, we're going to have to map it to the name of the network, right? Because our Brownie config has this network section, but it's mapped by the name of the network, not by the ID. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a helper config in our SRC. So we're just going to create a new file, helper config.json, and it's literally just going to be a JSON object that maps numbers to their associated chain names. So 42, for example, is going to be Coven. 4 is going to be Rinkby. 1337 going to be Dev, or it could also be Ganache, right? 1 is going to be mainnet, etc. Now that we have this helper config, we can do import helper config from /helper config.json. And before we even get the dApp token address, we can do const network name is going to equal that helper config at the chain ID. Now TypeScript is actually going to get a little bit mad at us here. So we need to add a little bit more to this line actually. So we need to say, okay, only grab from this helper config if chain ID exists, right? Because there might be a chance that chain ID is nothing or it's something really weird. So we're going to say chain ID, and we're going to use this tertiary operator again. We're going to say if this chain ID exists, then go ahead and use the helper config. However, if it doesn't exist, just use dev. I should spell chain ID right so it doesn't get really confused on me. And whenever we return one of these components or try to use one of these components, we're always going to have to return some type of HTML or div tag like this. We head over to our app. We add our little main bit here. Of course, we're going to want to import this. We'll say import main from ./components/main. We save it. We'll add our main tag here. Our main opening. When we do the syntax, we're basically saying in it. Now, depending on your setup, you might actually run into this error here saying element implicitly has an any type because expression, blah, blah, blah. And you might be saying, okay, well, what's going on here? Now, to make our lives easier, we're going to tone down TypeScript's strictness here. So what we're going to do is in our TypeScript config.json, we're actually going to add suppress implicit any index errors. So we're basically suppressing when we get this type of error because it's not ever actually going to affect anything. I should probably spell this correctly. We'll save it. Now, if we save this file here, we're going to actually get this saying everything's compiled, everything looks good. And if we refresh our front end, we're going to get back to exactly where we are before. Now, what we can also do is we can also console.log these out. We can also see in the console exactly what these are going to look like. So if we do console.log chain ID and console.log network name, we save and we go back. We can go hit inspect, go to the console, and we'll see 42 and Coven gets printed out in the console over here. So that's 42 is the chain ID and Coven is the network name. So we know that we're doing this right. Okay, great. So we have our network name and we have a chain ID. We've got a way for us to update our front end with a new script. Let's finally get those different addresses that we need. We'll say the constant variable dApp token address is going to equal something from that build folder or that chain info folder that we created. Inside here, inside deployments, we have this map.json And since I've already deployed this to Kovan, we have DApp token and token farm on the Kovan network. So we can then use that and say, if we are connected to a chain ID, and that's what this question mark is doing, saying if this chain ID exists, then look into that mapping, else we're just going to use a 0 address, right? So how do we actually get this mapping in here though? So I'm going to say import network mapping from, this is going to be in that chain info folder inside the deployments, and it's just going to be map.json. So we're going to take this network mapping object, and we're going to say if the chain ID exists, then inside this network mapping JSON object, we're going to cast that chain ID as a string, and then we're going to grab the name of the DApp token, which is going to be DApp token, and we're going to grab whatever address is at the top, right? So this is going to be a big list. The more times we deploy, the more times Brownie's going to keep track of it, and there's going to be all these different addresses, and we just want this one right at the top, right? We want the most recent one here. So we're just going to say at position 0. Otherwise, if we're not on a chain ID, we're just going to use a 0 address. And Ethers.js actually has a really nice package to give us what's called constants. So we're going to do constants dot address 0, and we can import that from Ethers. So we'll do import constants from Ethers. If you don't already have Ethers installed here, we're going to do cd front end. We're going to do yarn add Ethers. And now we have the Ethers package in here. Now, we're not going to do the same thing for the WETH token or the FAU token, because those tokens are defined in the Brownie config, as opposed to being defined in our map.json here. So to get those ones, we're going to say const WETH token address. It's going to equal, let's check first if the chain ID exists, and if it does, we're going to grab it from the Brownie config. So to grab that, we're going to do import Brownie config from, again, now that we've imported it, Brownie config.json. And now we can work with this Brownie config inside of our front end. So we'll say Brownie config of networks, of that network name of the WETH token. And if chain ID does not exist, then once again, we're going to do constants.address 0. So we're just going to leave it blank. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for the FAU/the DAI token. So we'll do const FAU token address equals chain ID question mark. So if the chain ID does exist, it'll be the Brownie config networks network name FAU token. And if chain ID doesn't exist, it'll be constants dot address 0. Okay, awesome. And if we save it, oops, looks like I put an extra comma in there by accident. Just going to get rid of that and resave, and then refresh here. So I'm getting an issue because I'm on the Rinkeby chain right now, and it's saying, hey, there's nothing for Rink. There's no DApp token for Rinkeby. You got to be on Kovan. So if I go back to Kovan here and I refresh, now it works out fine, right? This might still break for you if you're on Kovan and you haven't deployed anything to Kovan. We can fix this in our config for the DApp provider by changing the supported chains for this. Now, typically, a lot of the times you're going to want to test using a Ganache chain or some type of local chain so that your front-end testing can be a lot faster. For this, we're just going to do everything on Kovan, but a nice little challenge for you would be to refactor this so that it also works with something like Ganache. And we're going to not use Ganache. So I'm just going to go back to app.tsx. We're going to remove Ganache. We're going to even remove Rinkeby for now. We're just going to work with Kovan just to make it simple. If I go to our React page now, refresh, I can connect. Awesome. If I go to Rinkeby, it's not going to freak out because it says, hey, Rinkeby is not even supported. So I don't care what you're doing. However, Kovan is supported. So we're connected and we're looking good. And the thing is, we really don't want to couple our front end with our contracts, right? We really want to code the contracts independently and the front end independently anyways. So let's get back into our main.tsx. So we're going to be in here for a while, but we've already done some great things. We've gotten what network we're on, what chain ID we're on, and we've gotten the different addresses for these different tokens. So as you can probably see, the place that we're actually going to put stuff on the front end is in this little return statement here, right? Right now we're just returning I'm main, and we just see I'm main right here. To do this, we're actually going to make another component. We're going to make a component called your wallet. This component is going to be a part of this main component here. It's a component inside of a component that is literally only going to address our wallet needs. So on our little components tab here, we're going to go ahead and create a new folder, and we're going to call it your wallet. And this is just going to have everything to do with our wallet in here. So let's get in here. We'll create a new file because we're going to actually make a couple files. And our first one is just going to be your wallet.tsx. And this is going to be our component that is just going to deal with getting our wallet, getting the token balances of the different tokens that we have. Since we know we're going to put this component in main, and main is in our home base, our app.tsx, you know that we're going to do an export const your wallet in here, and we'll make this a function. Now, in order to actually show these tokens, we do need to get some information from our other component. We need to get some information on what the supported tokens even are. So we're going to have our main actually pass a variable to our wallet here. We're going to call it the supported tokens. And this is going to be of type your wallet props. And this is going to be your wallet props here. Just to tell TypeScript what this supported tokens is going to look like, we're going to say interface your wallet props. It's going to look like this. Supported tokens, and it's going to be an array of token. It's going to be an array of some token. We're going to grab that token type from main as well. So actually, we're going to do import token from main. And in our main, we're going to pass this token, and we're going to pass some supported tokens to our wallet. So right underneath those 3 token addresses, back in main, we're going to do const supported tokens is going to be an array of token, this token type. So above here, we're going to do export type token equals, and we're going to say a token type is going to involve an image, which is going to be a string, an address, which is also going to be a string, and a name, which will also be a string. So we're creating a new type called token here in our main function. We're creating this supported tokens object, which is an array of tokens. And this is, and this is going to equal that array syntax. So our first token is going to have an image that we haven't defined yet. The address is going to be this DApp token address. And the name, of course, is going to be DApp for DApp token. Now we're going to need a couple images. So at this point, you should see where we're going with this. We'll create this array of supported tokens. First is our DApp token, and we need an image for this DApp token. So if you're following along, you can just grab this image right off of the GitHub, and we're going to grab that DApp token, and we're going to pop it into src, and we're going to change this to dapp.png. Now we can import this by doing import dapp from /dapp.png. Now we can take this dapp image, and under image, now let's do the other tokens. So we'll do a comma, we'll do image, will be eth, address will be weth token address, name will be weth. And again, we can either, and let's close this off. And again, we can either grab right from my GitHub or pop it into my src here. We'll change this to eth.png. We'll scroll up and we'll import this as well. Import eth from /f.png. And boom, that looks good. One more comma to image. It's going to be FAU, or this is going to be our DIE token. Address is going to be FAU, token address. Name is going to be FAU, or DIE. This will be our DIE token. We'll pop it into our SRC, change the name to die.png. Then we'll import die from /die.png. Grab die, and it looks like we're going to name it die actually instead. And if your VS Code starts yelling at you about this can't find module, it's really confused, what we're going to do at the top here, so we're just going to add a little comment, /* ESLint disable spaced comment * reference types equals React scripts. And we'll save, and that issue will go away. All right, well, now that we have our supported tokens token array, we can actually pass this to that your wallet bit, right? So now we're going to go to this return bit. We're going to remove that div on main, and we're going to actually start getting to some meat here. So we're going to pass this to our your wallet component that we're going to import in just a second, and we're going to send it our supported tokens. We're going to say supported tokens equals supported tokens / like this. And of course, we're going to have to import your wallet here. So we'll scroll up to the top. We'll do import your wallet from / your wallet. We're actually going to make a new file in our your wallet folder called index.ts. And we're just going to export your wallet from / your wallet. And we'll save that. And we're getting an issue saying wallet is not defined. It's because this should be your wallet. Okay, cool. So we're getting another issue, but I'm going to fix that in a second. Great. So now we have some supported tokens. We have a wallet here. We're exporting our wallet with our index.ts in our your wallet folder. Now let's finish our your wallet implementation. And this needs a little equal sign here. Whoops. And we're going to get this little error basically because we don't have a return here. So we could just do return just to make it happy. Div hi. We'll even change this to I'm your wallet. And we'll save, and now everything's happy. We'll go to our front end, we'll do a quick refresh, and now we see I'm your wallet. So let's keep diving into your wallet here, right? Because this is going to be where we're doing all of this stuff about what's in your wallet. Now we're going to use a couple of these components from the materials UI here to get started. To start, we're just going to use this box. The box component, it serves just as a wrapper component for most of the CSS utility needs. It's just a box, right? It's a box that we can put on our front end. So we're going to come over into our your wallet, and we'll start working with this box. We're going to put everything inside of this little box here. We're going to have to import this box. Do import box from @material UI/core. We'll give this a little header. H1. We'll say your wallet. H1. Get a little header. Your wallet. I'm your wallet. Great. Now we'll get rid of this little I'm your wallet, and we'll create another box. And in here, we're going to add all of our functionality for what is in our wallet. Now we're going to use some tabs here from the materials UI to swap between the tokens, right? We're going to have one tab for FAU token, another tab for DApp token, and for wrapped ether. We're going to use this tabs thing here. So to work with tabs, we're going to need to import some tab stuff. So we're going to import tab context, tab list, and tab panel from material UI/lab. So material UI slash lab, these are some components that they're not quite ready to move to the core. So we do have to add these as well. So we'll go to our front end in our other shell, and we'll do yarn add material UI slash lab. These are kind of their testy ones, but they have some really nice features that we're going to use. But let's get into this box and let's make our first tab context value equal to, now in our box here, the first tab that we're going to have to use is going to be whatever token that we have selected. And to select tokens, we're going to use what's called a state hook. So we're going to create a state hook here inside of this. We're going to do const selected token index set selected token index equals use state number 0. So use state, we're going to grab from React. It looks like I've already imported it here. Import React, comma, brackets use state from React. And what this is going to do, it's going to create one variable, selected token index. This is going to be whatever token that we're on. And then set selected token index is going to update this selected token index. This use state components thing is a way of saving state between renders of components. So in our little box here, we're going to start with a tab context. We're going to start basically with our own tab, and the value is going to be equal to whatever token we currently have selected dot to string. And we're going to have to make a list of these tokens in our tab context. We're going to have to add some way to change between the tabs, right? When we change between the tabs, we want a different token to be selected. And we're going to make a tab list that's going to change whenever we click the different tabs. So we're going to add some functionality to this, but for now we're just going to give it an aria label. Call this our stake form tabs. And based off the supported tokens in a mapping of the token to index, we're going to call a function in here where we return a tab, which will have a label equal to the token.name. The value would be equal to the index.string, or excuse me, .toString. And the key is going to be equal to the index. Tab is something that is just from the material UI slash core. So we're going to import tab from that material UI slash core. I should probably spell supported tokens correctly. Supported tokens. And now, if we look at our UI, we can now see we got a couple different buttons here, which is great. We have dep, weth, and die, right? These are the different supported tokens that we're mapping here. Now, of course, if we click the different buttons, nothing actually happens. So we do need to handle a change. We do need to code some functionality to handle a change whenever we do something different. So in our tab list, we're going to add on change equals handle change. And we're going to code a little functionality at the top to actually handle a change. So we'll say const handle change. It's going to be equal to an event, a react.change event. We'll do a new value. It's going to be a string, and this is a function. So we're going to do this little function syntax again. And all we're going to do is we're going to use our little state hook here. So we're going to do set selected token index, and we're going to parse the int of the new value that we get. So what's happening here? We've added this new functionality where whenever we change one of those tabs, we're going to change the selected token, right? This selected token number is going to be different. And what we do is we map the indexes to a token, right? So each one of these tokens is going to represent a certain number. So now when we save, when we go check out our front end, you can now see that we do indeed swap between tabs here, which is really nice. All right, let's keep going. So that's cool. We have a way to swap between the different tokens visually here, but we need a big stake button, right? The reason that we need to swap between the tokens is because we need a way to stake between them. So when we're on one of these tabs, we're going to add a stake form here. We're going to add a big button that allows us to stake. So we're going to do some TypeScript. We're going to do supported tokens.map. We're going to map that token and index again. It's going to be another function. Use that. And in here, we're going to return a different tab panel. The value in here is going to be the index.toString. Key is going to be the index. We'll make a little div in here. And we're going to need to put two pieces in here. We're going to need to be putting our wallet balance in here, and then also a big stake button, right? Of course, if we look at it right now, it's just going to say our wallet balance and a big stake button. But how do we actually do this? How do we actually get our wallet balance and one of these big stake buttons? Well, we're probably going to need some type of component to get our actual wallet balance that we're going to stick in here. So, yep, you already know, we're going to go in here into our your wallet component. We're going to create a new file, and this is where we're going to define that wallet balance component. And we're going to import our wallet balance into our wallet here so that we can actually see the balance of our wallet right in the front end. And this is where we're going to actually be reading off-chain finally after a lot of TypeScript and React setup. Since we're going to be importing this into our your wallet component here, of course, we're going to start with export const wallet balance. And we're going to make this a function. So we'll do this really weird function syntax. And we're probably going to want to pass this the token, right? The token that we want to get the balance of. So we're even going to set that up like this, a token in here. And we'll define what this looks like with the interface called wallet balance props. So we'll say export interface wallet balance props. And this will be a token, right? This will be that same token type that we defined before. So we're going to have to import that. So we'll say import token from main. All right, great. And that's our initial setup here. We'll grab from the token that we pass to this, we'll get the image, address, and the name from that token. Address and name. We'll grab the account, right? Because we're going to need the account along with the token. So we'll say const account equals use ethers. And of course, we're going to have to import account from, import not account, use ethers from @useDApp /core. We're going to need the account, we're going to need the address, and useDApp /core has a nice little hook called use token balance that we're going to use. You can check it out in the documentation. It provides a way to fetch the balance of ERC20 tokens specified by a token address. It makes our lives a lot easier. So we'll just import that as well, use token balance. And all we have to do really is do const token balance equals use token balance of the address of the token and our account here. We could even do a quick console.log token balance to see if we're doing it correctly. And we take this wallet balance and import it into our wallet here. We should be able to see something. So we'll import it into our wallet now. Let's scroll to the top. We'll do import wallet balance from /wallet balance. And down inside our very large return function here, we'll add this new tab or this new component. We'll say wallet balance. We still, remember, we need to send it the token. So we'll send it tokens at the index of the selected token index. I should spell supported tokens right. I should spell wallet balance right with a capital B. We do need to do a return so that it's actually a JSX component. We'll do a div. We'll just have this say, I'm the wallet balance. If we go to our front end, we do a quick refresh. we do indeed see this little print line here. This is JavaScript's big number. So if we really want to see this token balance, we'll do dot to string. And we have to put this question mark here to tell TypeScript, hey, turn it to a string if it's not undefined. And now if we save, we go to our front end, we do a refresh. Since we are connected to Coven here, we can see we get an amount printed out here. And if we switch tabs, you'll see the different amounts being printed here, which is fantastic. Cool. So let's remove this little console.log. We want to show this token balance, obviously, in our UI, right? We don't want to have people to have to go to the console.log, right, to actually see it. We want it to represent, we want it to show up where it says, I'm the wallet balance. So what we're going to do, first, we should probably format it, right? Because this is in units of way. So we're going to do const formatted token balance. This will be a number, which will equal to token balance. If token balance does exist, again, we're using this tertiary operator, we're going to parse float format units token balance 18. Otherwise, we're just going to use 0. Format units is a nice little import that we're going to grab from the Ethers project. So we'll do import format units from at Ethers project /units. And of course, yarn add at Ethers project. And of course, we're going to do a yarn add on this here. We'll do yarn add at Ethers project /units. And now this formatted token balance is going to be this token balance that we just got, but formatted much nicer. And in our little div here, what we could just do is we could just add this formatted token balance. We'll save and we'll look at the front end now. And aha! We now see we have 100 DAP, 0 WETH, and 15 DAI, right? These numbers might be a little bit different depending on how much you actually got, but this is perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. So let's close out the console and let's flesh this out a little bit. Let's make this look a little bit nicer here. So instead of just returning a little div like this, let's actually make a new component called balance message, and we'll use this instead. We'll create a new component called balance message, and it'll format up the way we actually show these formatted tokens. And here we'll pass it a couple variables. We'll pass this component an amount. We'll pass it a label. We'll say the label is going to be your unstaked name balance, right? We're grabbing name from the token, and we'll pass it a token image src, which is going to be that image. So we're going to pass it a label, or excuse me, not img, it's going to be image. We're going to pass it a label, a token image, and an amount, right? And this component is just going to make us have this balance look a little bit nicer. So in our your wallet section, we're going to do a new file called balanceMessage.tsx. Oops, not tsxx. tsx. And we can kind of rip through this pretty quickly. So per usual, we're going to do export const balance message is going to equal a function where it's going to take those parameters, a label, an amount, and a token image src. And this will be an interface of balance message props. This will be a function, of course, so we'll do this weird function syntax. Of course, we need to tell TypeScript what this looks like. So we'll say interface balance message props. What are those inputs? We'll say the label is going to be a string. The amount is going to be a number. And the token image src is going to be a string. And in here, we're going to once again do that use styles bit from Materials UI, because we want to style this up a little bit. So we're going to import make styles from at material /UI/core. We'll do a const use styles. It's going to equal make styles theme, which we're going to skip doing a theme, but let's make some styles for the different pieces. Let's give it balance message be surrounded mainly by a container, which will have a couple of styles in here. We'll say the display is going to be an inline grid. The grid template columns are going to be auto, auto, auto. Again, you can check out all these parameters in the documentation. There's going to be a gap, which will be theme.spacing 1. Again, we're skipping theme, but this will just be a way to add some spacing, and then align items in the center. We'll also give the token image its own styling. We'll give it a width of 32px, 32 pixels, and then the amount, we'll just do, we'll give it a font weight of 700. So we'll make that a little thick. So now that we have our use styles, we have our styling here. We can go into our export below. We'll do const classes equals use styles. And we're going to return a div. Class name is going to be equal to that main container, classes.container. We'll do another div just for that label that we're looking for. We'll do another div for class name equals classes.amount. So have that nice font weight. And in here, we'll just have the amount. And then we'll grab that image of the token. Class name is going to equal to classes.tokenImage. We'll grab the source of that image is just going to be that token image src that we get passed. And we'll give it an alt called token logo. And we'll close that tab out. Great. So what we're going to want to do is in our wallet balance here, this balance message that we just created, we'll do import balance message from ... components / your wallet, capital W. And actually, I know we're going to use this balance message a little bit later. So I'm actually going to grab it and drag it into components, move it into components, and move it out of your wallet, because I know that we're actually going to use it a little bit later. So that means in our wallet balance, we're just going to pull it right from components / balance message. And whoops, we actually need to make this look like this. Close it out here. Remove this part. Like this. Boom, right like that. And now let's try out the front end. Okay, we're looking a little bit nicer, right? We have a really thick number here explaining how much of the token we have. We have the images popping up. This is starting to look great. Let's add this stake button, right? So that when they see this, they can actually stake and interact with our contract here. So to do this, we do need to create another component called our stake form. So in your wallet, we're going to create a new file called stakeform.tsx. And this is where we're going to add a little button and an amount for the users to actually stake on our contract. So you already know we're going to start with export const stakeform equals, and we're going to have our wallet pass the token just like we passed the token to wallet balance. So we'll say token, and we'll have this be stake form props, which is an interface we're going to define in a second. This is a function, so we'll do this fun function syntax here. And then stake form props, as you know, is just going to be a token. So we'll do export interface stake form props. And this is just going to be a token of type token, which again, we're going to import token from main. Great. And that is our starting point for this. So we're going to create a stake form with a big button that says stake, and the user can actually choose how much they want to stake on our smart contract. So we're going to do some similar stuff as we did before. We're going to grab some variables. We're going to say the address is going to be that token address that we get from the path